Well, good evening. I don't know that, well, I'm sure that Phil and Kathy won't be here, given the condition that Kathy's in. Jeannie had been through this particular segment one time before, and I wanted some butter cookies, so she decided she would stay home and make those for me. Bless her pea-picking heart.
Gosh, if she made them earlier, you could have brought them.
Yeah, but then I had to share them with you, Brian, now,
Right.
because I never know whether you're going to show up or not. So I think we can get started. I don't know if Jill may wander in, I'm not sure. But thank you for coming. It's been a long day. It has been a long day. Let's have a word of prayer and then we'll get on with it. I'm going to sit tonight, if you don't mind, right here on this little chair. Lord, thank you for the opportunity just to discuss some different religions and different beliefs, and to remind us how fortunate we are that we were brought up the way we were and that you reached out and pulled us to you. Be with those who are not here at this time, and just help us to enter into a new week. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, we are going to briefly talk about Buddhists and Hindus. And the reason, as I mentioned last week, the odds are not very good that you're going to be accosted by a Buddhist or a Hindu to debate your faith with you. That's why I decided to do them both in one night and to skirt over them. Now it can happen, more likely someone of the Hindu faith, because as you probably are aware, there are quite a number of Indians anyway, real Indians like from out east, that have relocated to the United States. Basically, they really like American universities and colleges, and once they come, they stay here. They also like the economic opportunities. They aren't as limited as they are in India. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Generally speaking, Buddhists are not going to accost you on the street, although a sect of Buddhists were very popular in the 60s and 70s, largely because of the rise of the Beatles and various other rock groups that went over to study under the gurus. I don't know what drove them to do that, probably LSD or something along those lines. But that brought back a sect called the Hare Krishnas. And I remember, and Al may too, when I was in the service, and this was in the 70, 71, as I had to travel for the service, nearly every airport had a group of Hare Krishnas there, chanting and dancing and trying to sell you books, which I had no problem with. They were very peaceful and very kind, polite people, but they certainly did not speak the same language that I did, but you don't see them anymore. I'm not sure where they went. Maybe they just don't come to Roanoke. I don't know. But Buddhists, they're kind of like Baptists and Protestants in general. There are as many different colors of Buddhist or sects of Buddhist as there are Baptist or Protestant denominations. There are a ton of them, and I ain't going to go over all of them because they all believe fundamentally the same thing. There's some minor tweaks, and you're going to find it very interesting. I do anyway. Starting next week, when we take a couple of weeks to go over the Protestant denominations, that we are so fractured, we are so splintered, and there's not a nickel's worth of difference between any of us, which is a daggum shame, to be honest with you, but we'll look into that next week. But Siddhartha Gautama was born in 563 BC, and he became enlightened after sitting under a bo tree for 49 days meditating. Now, what does that mean? Buddhism promises peace both to the individual and to the world. What's not to like about that? It works on changing the world to make it a better place, and people are drawn to the devotion that really sucked in Buddhist or engaged Buddhist show in their spirituality. If you go to California, you'll see them all over the place. Not so much, but New York, but some. And these people are really engaged. As I mentioned, the Hare Krishnas are a sect of Buddhists. They were very polite people. I mean, they were awesome, to be honest with you, as far as their engagement with you and their speech and their politeness. And that attracts people that have been turned off by the lukewarm Christianity that they have run into in the world. They don't teach a living God. In fact, one of the things that we talked about during a previous engagement was that a worldview had to cover everything. And what I mean by everything, a worldview had to answer all experiences in the universe. That's a lot to say. Where did I come from? Why am I here? How did I get here? Okay, those are the three bell cow questions that have to be answered if you're thinking about life in general. Why am I here? Where did I come from? And remember, we talked about that splits into two camps. There are only two possible answers. Supernatural, meaning something bigger than me made me, okay? Or materialism, which means the stuff was already here and by accident it came together and created everything that I see. Okay, to put it simply in words that we would use today, God or evolution. Those are the only two worldviews that are acceptable. They cover everything. I go back and stress that because Eastern religions as a rule, and Buddhism in particular, do not care anything about this. They don't address it at all. They take the world and the universe as they find it. Their interest is not in explaining the suffering and the happenings in the universe, the experiences we have. They're not interested in that. Their interest is in getting out. Their interest is in getting out of here. How do I get out of this cycle? To go back a little bit, the goal of each soul is to reach a state they call nirvana. And back in the 60s, nirvana is not the same thing as being high on dope or taking LSD. That's not nirvana. They have a very specific definition of it, which I'll get to in a minute. But that's the goal, for the soul to escape the bounds of this life and to reach nirvana. Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, got there by meditating under that bo tree for 49 days. Well, what happened? Initially, Buddha was born to a wealthy father who was so wealthy. He, of course, had thoughts of his son taking over for him one day and continuing to rule. So he went out of his way to remove every unpleasantness from Buddha's sight. If Buddha left the house and went walking down the road, his dad commanded that all sick and elderly people be gotten out of the way. He didn't want his son to see any of that. The people that were working out in the rice paddies, that were doing manual labor, were commanded to be happy and to act as though they were enjoying their work. In other words, he wanted Buddha, his son, to live in a fool's paradise, to not realize what the world was really like. Well, Buddha, one day, without notifying his parents, went out with a servant on a walk and found everything the way it really is. And he was so depressed by the suffering that he found, the age and the sickness and the hard work, the labor, the physical suffering, the emotional suffering, that he renounced his inheritance, he renounced his cushy life, and he went to live with monks. Now these monks, if you're really smart, you'll realize there isn't any Buddhism yet because Buddha hadn't made it. So what monks was he studying under? Well, at that time, since he's from northern India, and Hinduism has been around for 5,000 years, he was studying under Hindu monks. Okay? And for 6 years, studying under those monks, he starved himself, he flogged himself, he froze himself, he did all these penitential type things that a monk does to deprive himself of any pleasure in life at all. And Buddha finally decided that that was stupid, that he wasn't going to live that way anymore. That's when he went out and sat under the bo tree. And he meditated for that 49 days on every puzzle, everything that puzzled him about life. And he swore he was not going to move a muscle until he had answers for all the things that riddled him, that puzzled him. Now, I don't know about you, I cannot imagine sitting in one place for 49 days. But that's supposedly what he did. And when he finally got up and left the bo tree, he had become enlightened. Enlightened meant that he had the answers to everything. Okay? All that had puzzled him, all that had worried him or bothered him about life, everything he had an answer for. So he went out to help others find that.
Now this is the initial Buddha.
Right.
In that they believe that the generation now of the Buddha is a reincarnation of that original Buddha.
Reincarnation, and I'll get to this in a second, but reincarnation is a big piece of this. Buddha, I don't know how or why or anything else, but Buddha got lucky apparently, because I don't know if that was his first life or if it was his 1,000th life. He got enlightened. So when he died, he went to nirvana. He got to be sucked into the energy of the universe. Generally they believe, Buddhists in general, and like I said, there are many sects, but generally they believe that by renouncing the world and all of its pleasures, meditating and right living, they can eliminate suffering and reach nirvana like their master. And this I have to read to you because I have to tell you, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense based on the West and what we're brought up with. Nirvana, what is it? It's an area where there is no earth, water, fire, or air. It is not the region of infinite space or consciousness. It is without foundation, continuation, or stopping. It is the end of suffering. I don't have any idea exactly what that means, but that's what they're looking for. I don't know how they could describe it, to be honest with you, because their view is that when they pass on and when they have reached that stage of consciousness called nirvana, they are absorbed into the universe. So I don't know how anybody would come back and tell them what to expect or exactly what nirvana is. But that's what they believe. Reincarnation, you're given multiple times to get it right. You have to get the answers to all of your puzzlements like Buddha did before you are allowed to reach nirvana. And when you don't, and you die, you're reincarnated, and you get to go through it again. Try again. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, you get another chance. Okay? Monks, male monks, have about 250 commandments that they have to follow, maintain, and through meditation, reach nirvana. 250 commandments. We didn't have much luck keeping 10. So I don't know how many lives it would take me. Women, however, nuns, they're called, have 500
That sounds about right.
that they have to stay, get right, and through the meditation, and then they have to be reincarnated in a final iteration as a man before they are able to reach nirvana. I don't know why they think Christians are so sexist. I don't get it. But anyway. They also have a great deal of belief or faith, and you've heard this for years, about karma. Karma means that you will reap what you sow. That's basically what karma means. And bad karma is when you made mistakes in a previous life that are revisiting you in this life. And you got to keep going through it. Did you ever see Groundhog's Day?
Oh, yeah.
The movie? It's like Groundhog's Day, only it's not getting better. Because the mistakes of the past life are visiting you in this life. But through that repetition, the idea is like, and I'm not trying to make this funny, but the idea is like the movie Groundhog's Day, with each iteration you will improve. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, but with each iteration you will improve, and eventually you'll get there. Okay? That's the idea. It is also basically, and as I said, they have those commandments, 250 for the boys, 500 for the girls. Now, meeting commandments, what does that indicate that you have to do, or what will get you into heaven in our parlance?
Good works.
It's a works religion. Bingo, Carol, you're absolutely right. It's a religion of works. You have the meditation and you have all that happy stuff to bring you peace or contentment or whatever, but it's also a religion of works, because not just being spiritual, so to speak, is going to get you there. You also have to fulfill all of the regulations, so to speak. And that's roughly it. They attract people because, first of all, I don't know why, but people have a tendency today to find a religion of works easier. I don't know why, but it's something they can touch, it's something they can put their hands on, rather than having a faith-based religion that nobody seems to be able to explain. They like the idea that if I do A, B, C, and D, I'm going to be in good shape. And frankly, if it worked, I'd like that too, because I could punch my ticket as I completed each thing. They attract people because they do pursue knowledge. They have great attitudes as a general rule, like I mentioned with the Hare Krishnas. They have a lot better attitudes than a lot of Christians I've known in the past. One of the worst representatives of God on this planet is a Christian, because of our self-righteousness and so forth, and our tendency. I've never seen, and I'll tell you, I've never seen that here, but I have certainly seen it, and I suspect you have too. Their speech, they don't lose control of themselves. They're very proper in their speech. They don't have four-letter words in their vocabulary. Their actions are commendable. Their occupations are commendable. They don't chase the highest paying job. They do what will fit their community best, what their community needs. And then their meditation and just their outward composure. They are very attractive to people who are tired of worn out Christianity that people don't see lived out in front of them.
When we were younger, I would think you were probably the same way. I was searching that way too.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a book I read, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, is that little thin book.
I remember.
In Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Racing. You read that?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's regarding Siddhartha. It was kind of fictional story of
Herman Hesse wrote a book, Siddhartha.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, and look, and I'm not saying that this is bad, because if this is the case in your life, it certainly comes with a lot less pain and suffering. But I went in the Army, I graduated from high school when I was 17 years old. There was nowhere else to go. My parents signed the papers and I enlisted in the Army. I was raised in a Baptist church. I was baptized in a Baptist church. But at that time, in the service, by the time I got out, I'm not saying I didn't believe in Jesus, but I sure wasn't living for him. I was living for me. And I was searching as well. And I went through everything. I mean, there wasn't much you could do in the late 60s and early 70s that I didn't do. I freely admit it. Not proud of it, but I freely admit it. For me, I had to know what was true. And the unfortunate thing is, in today's world, truth doesn't have anything to do with anything. Originally, philosophy I'm doing great tonight, aren't I? Philosophy meant knowledge or truth. All studying, all education was seeking out the truth of a particular subject. Whether it was mathematics, geometry, all they were doing was figuring formulas to see what worked and made it true. The same with the human condition. Philosophy couldn't find the truth because they didn't have it. They didn't know it. There was no truth to speak of.
and it sounds like it's going back to Athens in the day of Paul with all that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Because this came about in the West. Other things were going on in China and all that we don't know about because we're on the other side of the planet. It took God revealing himself to the Jews originally, and of course we talked about how they blew it this morning. Then it took the ultimate truth, the Word of God being placed on the planet, and who was the Word? Jesus. It took that being revealed to us to make truth known. And then we have plenty of indication of what we've done with that. But it's available. It's there. So anyway, that's what Buddhists fundamentally go through. And again, today you can, and I don't mean to keep harping on this. Look, I know I keep saying it, and I include myself in this canoe, but we got to do something. if we want to get out and reach people for Christ, Buddhists are doing a better job than we are. They're snatching young people all over the place. I mean,
Did you ever hear that there was only one exact science, and that was math?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's because
It's improvable.
is exactly. Insofar as exact science, it's the only thing that can be proven to be true or false. Because when you do a mathematical formula, it either comes out right or it doesn't.
Right.
There's only one right answer. So, yeah, that's true.
I've got on my phone, I took a photograph of a mathematical formula that proves the existence of God. I have no idea what it means, but I
Well-
was kind of curious as to that.
Doesn't mean anything.
Just so.
And just so, that's right. Just like Steve, this is totally off the subject, but
That's all right, you're good at that.
we're just, yeah, I'm good at going down rabbit holes. Stephen Hawking, people outside of the church get irritated with me because I say Stephen Hawking is wrong. And how can I say that the most brilliant man in a generation was wrong? Well, I'm not talking about wrong in his mathematical formulas. I'm talking about he's wrong in the conclusions he draws. And he himself, the only real proof, and there isn't any proof because, and I'll tell you, it's not that God can't prove his existence. I guarantee you, he could prove that he's there in the blink of an eye. It's not that he can't, but if he did, it takes faith out of the equation. And it takes people coming to him on their own out of the equation. Because if you knew that Zeus was on Mount Olympus with a thunderbolt aimed at your heart, unless you bowed to him, then that's not real love. That's, I'm going to do it because I don't want to die. Okay? So, the one thing that is close to, or fundamental thing that is close to proof is time. Okay, and we've talked about this before. And one day, I may only have 2 people in the class, but I'm going to go through time. Time will blow your mind. But anyway, the reason I say that is because time has a beginning. Linear time for us, human beings, has a beginning and an end. Okay? If it has a beginning, something had to start it. And this is where we go back to where our evolution or our creation. Something had to start it. Newton's laws of motion say it takes a force to get things moving. So, Newton's laws of motion, I beg your pardon. So something had to get this started and then had to push it into motion to get it going. Okay? To say that a formula, well, here's what Stephen Hawking was adamant about coming up with a theory of time that did away with the need for a creator. Okay? I mean, because Stephen Hawking was a brilliant man, a brilliant physicist, but when he got into speculative physics, he drew all the wrong conclusions. And that's sad because he's not going to be in heaven. He came up with a theory of time that was like this, like a badminton birdie, okay? Meaning that time, as it goes back to the beginning, actually was curved at the beginning so that he could avoid the idea of a beginning. Because a beginning necessitates something like a God. It just does, because the other theory doesn't work. How did he come up with this? He's a physicist, like Brian said. He's a mathematician. Not just a mathematician, he's the mathematician of mathematicians. How did he come up with this? He made it up. and he admitted that he made it up.
Still looks like he had a beginning and an end.
Well, this is the beginning. In the beginning, although you're right, if you get fine enough, even on a curve has to have a furthest out point, which would still indicate a beginning. But he came up with this theory, and he worked it out mathematically, but when he was questioned or when he was presenting it, he admitted that he changed the numbers to make it work. That when he put the act, and I don't know what, look, this leaves me way behind. I don't know what numbers he used or where he gets them or anything else, but when he plugged in the correct numbers, this was nothing. It was cockeyed. But he cooked the books, in other words, to make it work.
What gets me is that generations, Einstein and Newton, who I believe believed in a God, I don't know about Einstein.
Newton did.
And people like Hawking, that people will look upon these men as actual gods because of their intellect. And yet God is right there and they can't see God. And that annoys me, to be honest
Well,
with you.
it annoys me as well,
But avoid it, they just ignore it.
because in this, get over yourself. I mean, how can you think that you know so much
Mhm.
that there's no need for any of this, the rest of this?
Well, going back to the Buddha thing,
Mhm.
when I was younger, I was looking for answers like that. Now, I had been a Christian since I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to be 18 years old, I'm thinking, it couldn't be so simple, the love of God,
Sure.
you know. And so I started looking into this other stuff, and I still
Yeah.
came back to Jesus Christ. But that was a generation too that we came from. I don't know if these generations now are into that so much as we were in our generation.
I don't have any quantitative data on that, but look at it this way, just common sense. A lot of the things the kids are doing today, their parents are doing with them. Okay? You have kids that are teenagers having children out of wedlock. A lot of their parents had children out of wedlock. Okay? This is not new. What I'm getting at is a precedent has been set for a new reality for today's teenagers. Now, I'm not batting them down. I'm not saying they're bad or wrong. They are exactly what they've been taught to be. And not only their parents, but the school system and everything else, and the church. And the church has brought this along.
Now, there is that generation, though, of kids that are turning to Jesus Christ, too, thankfully.
Sure.
And
Well,
You know, so much of that talked back in my days about, I'm okay, you're okay.
oh yeah.
And so whatever you decide you want to do, you do it.
Look,
And instead of spending time chasing the realism of Jesus Christ, we chase girls
sure, of course. Look,
and cars, motorcycles.
the fact of the matter is you go back 3-4 generations. You can go back to your great-granddaddy. I don't know if we can go all the way back to Charlemagne, but you can go back to your great-granddaddy. And especially if you are Southern, but this is pretty much true all over the country. They would always say that in polite company there are two things you do not talk about.
Religion and politics.
Religion and politics. Why, in the name of all that is holy, would someone tell you and convince you that you have the cure for cancer and you're not to share it with anybody? We learned that from our Christian great-grandparents. And now we're trying to make up for 100 years of leaving a void for kids coming into the world that need to know what we know. And we said, nah, don't talk about that. And because of that void, it's been filled by other stuff.
Idolatry.
And we have left it to the school system, and the churches have been. They have been for years and years feel-good churches. When was the last time you heard a sermon on homosexuality? No pastor in his right mind will touch that. Because no matter how fundamental your church body or your congregation claims to be, there's going to be somebody that is torqued off by that. We don't preach truth. I'm not saying we preach lies. I'm not saying that. Political correctness. We avoid the things that people don't want to hear. So we're only giving them half of the truth. We need to change that. Anyway, I'm sorry, I went down a rabbit hole.
Difficult subject.
You're right, Brian, I am good at that. But yeah, it is. And it's not something that we have a magic wand to change. But I think we need to find ways. We need to find ways.
Some of us grew up in the Boy Scout, and merit badges. So this is the way you got to other
Works.
things. Works.
Works.
Yeah.
And it was work. But you can't even be a Boy Scout anymore.
Got to be a scout.
You got to be an It Scout.
It's scout.
I mean,
In Scout.
and I mean, I don't mean disrespect.
Some fit right into that.
Wow, somebody other than me. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Bill.
I was traveling a couple of years ago, and that's when all this stuff was coming about with the equalities in the bathrooms. And I walked up to this door, and on the door it said, "Whatever."
And, do you know, and I will tell you, this is the God's honest truth. They have taken the name plaques off the doors where I work. Men and women, they've just taken them down.
Put up whatever.
And on the other side of the door is just so.
Yeah, just so. Let's talk a little bit about Hinduism. I'm not going to spend a lot of time.
I got a question.
Sure.
Where's the little fat Buddha guy that people rub their bellies and stuff like that? Where'd that come from?
That's Siddhartha Gautama. That's a little statuette. It's an idol of him.
How did he get fat sitting under a tree?
You don't do anything for long enough. You'll get fat whether you eat a lot or not.
Well, he ate?
Oh, yeah, he ate. Sure.
Oh, okay.
Sure he did.
Did he have to poo too?
I assume so. He may have just
So he
left
didn't
it
spend the
right
whole-
there.
He didn't spend the whole time there.
But now going back to that Siddhartha of that era, is that the same Buddha of today?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Mhm. That was the master, the founder of the religion. Now, thank you for the segue, Bill, because Hindus do not have any founder. We don't really know where it came from. It just kind of grew also in northern India for 5,000 years. Originally, Hinduism,
They're the ones that worship the cows.
indeed, Brian, indeed. So you would probably be a demigod.
Yeah,
You would be a
I
demigod
need
to
to
them.
talk to them and see.
A leader of
and
cows.
all that.
Outstanding in the field.
Yes, there you go. They were a believer in many gods, and cattle worked in there too. You used to see also back in the late 60s, early 70s, a lot of very colorful prints of frogs on a lotus pad, or that type of thing. They make the Greeks look like pikers when it comes to the number of gods they had. They had a god for everything. Now, over a period of time, Hinduism came to be more of a philosophy. And the number of gods, I don't know if they died or if they just got tired of drawing pictures of them, I don't know which. But the number of gods, while they still have quite a few, they shrank down. They shrank down, and it became more of a philosophy. They are focused on the idea that each individual is part of the entire body. And what do I mean by that? We are part of the energy of the universe. Each individual. There was a time when I was searching as well, and I don't know, maybe this just had to do with the amount of alcohol I was drinking. But you know, the universe or the solar system can be made to look like a bunch of atoms that are moving in a certain direction and all that sort of thing. And the comment was made, I forget who it was, but one of the Franz Kafka or one of those guys said that our universe could merely be a molecule in some giant's chair leg.
Yep.
Okay?
Every time I kill a mole, I think about
That's
the
right.
bleach.
That's right. And if your mind is geared a certain way, that's plausible. Of course it's not, but that's the idea that they have. That there could be many universes. We have no way of knowing. And of course, to a certain extent, that's true. We don't have any way of knowing.
A lot of the science now is claiming that.
Multiple universes, absolutely.
Each grain of sand is a universe in itself.
All of those things are exactly some of the things that they consider, that they look at. It's very unlike anything Western. Okay? Very unlike anything Western. And in fact, Buddha got tired of all this nonsense, and that's what made him go elsewhere and sit under the Bo tree. Because he got tired of all that stuff. But once again, it's very attractive. And again, typically it's out west or in major cities, because it appears very exotic. And to us, it is pretty exotic. The Hindus, when they're into their thing, do appear to be very, very spiritual. That also attracts, lacking any depth, people will take a surface or superficial spiritualism.
Easiest route.
Exactly. And once again, we have not really been very good for several generations at giving them depth, giving people the real depth of God. Reincarnation is also big in Hinduism, and kids or various people that are lost with anything else are very enraptured by reincarnation. And let me give you a really good reason why they like to believe that. Because it gives them allows them to delay making any moral decisions. I can do what I want this life because I'll come back and be a good boy next life. There was a man, I don't remember his name and I probably couldn't pronounce it, but he claimed that he was living his 1,732nd life. Who would know? I don't know how he knew that, but anyway.
Just so.
It's just so. It's a get out of jail free card. Because I don't have to do the uncomfortable things. I don't have to say no when I really want to say yes, because I can make up for it next time. And then that's also is an indication that if I have made a couple of bad mistakes, which we all do, and that in our view, they can be forgiven and we can move on in the love of Christ. If I make a couple of mistakes, there's no forgiveness for them, so I may as well give up even trying in this life.
So where procrastination came from?
Well, yeah, but I think it's a little more serious than that, but yeah, you can certainly procrastinate, that's for sure, because you're going to have eons to get there.
Don't put off till tomorrow what you can put off till the day after tomorrow.
Exactly. Now, personally, I've been blessed in more ways than I deserve, to be sure, but this hasn't been fun enough for me to want to do it again. I'm just saying. I'm not a pessimist. I don't have a death wish. I'm not in a hurry to leave, but I don't need to do this all over again. Once was enough. I'll be happy when I get to see Jesus. In addition, they profess hidden truths, and everybody likes that. That's why people get involved in a lot of things, is the mystery. Masons, for example, Masons do a lot of good things, but there's a mystery, an intrigue that gets people involved in it. In some cases, they want to learn what all that hidden is. They want to know. It's interesting. And Hinduism does the same thing. They have some inner secrets that as you learn to meditate better, as you learn to chant better, you will learn things that other people don't learn. So there's that attraction as well. And they, again, are largely attracted by, well, let's take an unsaved person today and what they see from Christians. These people are alive. They may be lost when they die, but while they're here, they're doing stuff. They're in colorful robes and they're, chanting and swaying and worshiping and meditating and doing all these things. Because again, Brian, we are a what do I have to do society. And they're doing it. They're doing it.
Do they have any moral direction at all?
Yeah, they're pretty much like the Buddhists. They have different things they have to achieve to get out of this life. They believe when they finally get to nirvana, they will be absorbed into the universe like a drop of water in the ocean. If you think of that, you just kerplunk and you're just one with everything. Okay? And it's not altogether a bad thought. It certainly is better than going to hell. So that's the way they look at it. And of course, Christians are wrong because a loving God, there'd be no hell. If I have to have that conversation one more time, I'm probably going to lose my mind. But anyway, there are a lot of things out there that, as silly as they may seem to us, or as weak and shallow as they may seem to us, there are reasons that people are attracted to them. And they are never probably going to overtake Christianity in numbers. But I have to say that if we have today, not counting the Christians that have come before us or may come after us, and I don't know what the current number is, so I think it's something like that. How do we square 1.8 billion Christians with the comment that the way is narrow and few will enter therein, that we're told in Scripture? That don't seem like a few to me. That's a bunch. And there may be how many more before us since Christ, and how many more after us, although nobody knows how long that will be. So, this is why, ad nauseum, I'm sure, and it probably irritates people, I'm always talking about we need to make sure where we are, and who we are, and what we're doing. And it's not a religion of works, that's true, Brian, but once we have accepted Christ, and we know we've been given salvation through Him, there are some things that He said that He would like to see us doing. You know? It's not...
Where does go ye?
Yeah. I mean, there's some things that He would like. And besides, if we're that excited about salvation, why aren't we sharing it?
Is He really looking for passive Christians?
Well, no. That's it.
Sitting on premises, waiting on the promises.
Yep. And again, I am entrapped just like everyone else because I don't know where to let it out. And we got to find those places. But look at it this way, and I'm not saying in a gloating or bragging way. You go out and get a brand new red Corvette. You're going to show it to everybody. You said, come on, go for a ride with it. Let me show you what this Hummer will do. Right? You get a 12-pointer during hunting season. Let me get a picture of this boy and send it to everyone I know. Don't you think we should be sharing Christ like that? I mean, and I believe everyone wants to. But we need to find out, we need to find how. Because there aren't people out there, most people in the United, and I don't know this to be a fact, I can't quantify it, but I would have to believe that let's take our area of Botetourt County. Most people who want to go to church are going to church. They have plenty of opportunity to go. And they're not. Now, there may be some others out there that would come if they felt like they were welcome. Because like my brother 40 years ago, they may not feel like they're dressed well enough. They may not have access to a shower often enough, and may think that they would be not welcome here. God forgive us if that ever happens, or if people are holding that kind of belief. I don't know if they are or not. But we need to be reaching out some kind of way, and those are the types of things we should be talking about. Is how, where can we go? What can we do? Most Hindus believe in salvation by works, ritual offerings, chanting, or yoga. I've seen some women in yoga pants that'll probably go to heaven. I don't know. But I don't know how that's going to get you there otherwise. Salvation means release from the cycles of reincarnation. You are on a hamster wheel. I can't draw a hamster or I would, but you've seen these little wheels where you got an aquarium and you got a wheel and your hamster in there and the hamster gets on the wheel and he just runs and runs and the little guy isn't getting anywhere. Well, that's your cycle of reincarnation. It just keeps going over and over and over and over and over. And the goal is to let me off this wheel. Nirvana is getting off this wheel and just ceasing to exist. If this was what I believed, I would find a great deal of comfort in thinking that someday I was going to cease to exist and just be done with it all. That's me. But that's what they believe, and then they become that drop of water in the ocean of the universe. Hinduism, my friends, happens to be third largest religion on the planet, behind Christianity and our friends with Islam. That's the third largest religion in the world. Last count I had was something like 750 million of them.
Where's Buddhism come?
They're
Way down the list?
They're down the list, yeah. But it's attractive, and it's taking people. It's taking people. But it's the third largest religion in the world, and we already briefly talked about what you're going to get out of Islam. But you got roughly 2 billion people that are in these two religious groups. 2 billion.
What is Ravi Zacharias? Was he at one time?
Yeah, he was a Hindu. And actually, when Pakistan separated and got independence from India, there was a big deal because they had Hindus, which was the majority of the population. They had both sects of Muslims, Sunnis and Shias, and they also had some Christians. And all three lived in Pakistan, and Pakistan wanted to break off and become a totally Muslim country. So if you go back and you can find any old film of that time, you've got all these people walking in different directions, some entering Pakistan, some leaving because of their religion. And they could not live together, so they had to get out. The world we live in.
It sort of covers India and Pakistan, which is a major part of the world population, but how about China?
Well, here's the thing, and this is even in Islamic countries. China is playing a strange game. China is very much politically minded, like the Soviet Union. They're as much communist as the Soviet Union ever was, politically. And that's the thinking of the people that run the country. However, to placate the people, the population, because you've got a population of over 1 billion people, if they don't want to buy into what you're selling, you're not going to be in power very long. So the people, they're a communist capitalist country. The people are allowed to work and manufacture and have children just like the rest of the world, while the political decisions that are made are trying to underpin communism. What they have done politically in China is they say, okay, if we can't beat them militarily, and maybe they could, but they would be wiped out as well, and that's a no-win scenario for anybody, we're going to beat them at their own game, which is capitalism. So China now has, or it goes back and forth between us and them, China has the strongest economy in the world. And that is very unusual for a communist country.
I understand there's a big underground church of Christianity.
You're absolutely right.
And it's thriving.
Yeah, and we won't know the true scale of it simply because they could all die if it was released. And that's why I think that in the Near East and Muslim countries and in China, in North Korea, that's the future of Christianity. And it's interesting to me that wherever they have skin in the game, and wherever they can be killed for their faith, that's where the church is thriving.
It's been that way always.
It always has. You're absolutely right. As soon as the law was that we could be Christians, stop meaning anything.
Became complacent.
Yeah. Stopped meaning anything. And I don't know why, but that's how it is. It's like when you maybe gave your teenage kid a car. They never took, maybe yours did, mine didn't. They never took care of it because they didn't have any money, it didn't cost them anything. They didn't have any skin in the game. Until they started paying the bills themselves, it really didn't mean a whole lot.
That's a good analogy.
You know, it's the same thing. But anyway, that's a lot, and that's a lot of me for one day, so.